There she is.
Elizabeth, who else from your staff would you like in here?
Sandra Montoya. And I think that's it at this time.
Okay, great.
I don't see Sean, right?
I just sent him an email, so hopefully he got that link and he'll be able to come in.
She.
Or she, I'm sorry.
Okay, we can wait, Chair, or we can get started, whatever you prefer.
Let's get started. Go ahead.
All right, commissioners and budget committee members, welcome. This is the first monthly budget committee meeting of several to come. I'm Gary Schmidt, County Administrator. We'll start with, well, first, welcome. Good to see you all again. Thank you for being here. Let's begin with introductions. And so let me lead this, and we'll start with the budget committee members, the county commissioners. Jim? Who are you, Jim?
Who am I?
Yes.
I am Jim Bernard, Chair of the Commission.
All right. Sonia?
Sonia Fisher, Clackamas County Commission.
Ken?
Ken Humberston, Clackamas County Commissioner.
Martha?
Martha Schrader, Clackamas County Commissioner.
Paul?
Paul Savas, County Commissioner.
Our public members, Wilda?
Hilda Park, citizen member.
Tom?
Tom Feely, citizen member.
Jan?
Emily, citizen member.
Anne?
Anne citizen member.
And we're just waiting on Sean Caldwell, the fifth public member. Our staff, Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Comfort, Interim Finance Director at the county.
And would you introduce Sandra, please, Elizabeth?
Yes, with pleasure. I'd like to introduce our budget manager, Sandra Montoya. She started 1 month ago today, and I welcome her as our budget manager for this process.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
A few more staff. Stephen?
Hello, Stephen Madcourt, County Council.
Drinda? You're on mute? You're on mute, Drinda?
Sorry. I'm Commission Staff Manager, Brenda Howard.
Christina?
Christina Twilliger, Administrative Assistant.
And from Public and Government Affairs, who are keeping us working smoothly, Garrett? Garrett?
Garrett T, Public and Government Affairs.
Great. And Rich?
Rich Marvin, Public and Government Affairs.
Excellent. Okay, that's the introductions. So Chair Bernard, if you're okay, we're ready to go through the agenda, and I'll turn the meeting over to Elizabeth Comfort, our Interim Finance Director, to lead the rest of the meeting. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners and Budget Committee citizen members. We are excited to start our monthly Budget Committee meetings this day. I think we are setting on a very excellent path to unifying our thoughts and our processes as we begin the new fiscal year and begin a major change in many fronts for our county budget. Today I'm also going to have Sandra. She's going to do a presentation. So Christina, if you are Brenda, allow her to have access to do that. We're going to talk about what the budget process is going to look like coming forward. We have a different way of doing things we want to roll out to you guys first. And I believe that there might be executive management team members on watching as well, because we are rolling out a new process countywide. But we're starting it here with you because we want to dialogue today about what changes we need to make as a county moving forward to have a sustainable budget, which we are planning to begin in July of 21 to have our revenues meet or exceed our expenditures. In the past, we relied on carryovers, sometimes using our contingencies, but we really want to have a sustainable budget that can take us into many years in the future with a strong reserve and strong financial stability.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, may I interrupt you right there, please? Budget committee members, this was at my request with Elizabeth concurring. I've asked all departments that we well prepare and propose to you a sustainable county budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. That's 1 year from now. I know in the past, committee, you've talked about a 2 to 3 year process. I am offering to you, I would like staff to provide this to you in 1 year by July 1st, 2021. It's your decision if you accept that or not, but that is my plan to propose to you a sustainable budget by July 1st, 2021. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so to do that, we need to change how we do things, looking at how we perform our budget process. And so starting with today, you received a packet last week for today's meeting, and I just wanted to kind of set us up with what you should be expecting each month. Is we'll be providing you with some not static, but consistent information monthly so that you can have just at your fingertips, that we keep you abreast of what is coming and happening and occurring in the county. However, primarily what we want these hours to be is full discussion, have an opportunity for you guys to dialogue and discuss and really strategize on key topics that we talked about during our budget committee meetings back in May. And today's topic is going to be really how do we frame and move forward with our budget process. We'll talk about at the end of this meeting, you know, what we are looking forward to in our August meeting. So I don't have, you know, a big overview of the information that I sent out. And we did receive a question from Tom Freely. Thank you for asking for further information on our equipment plan. So that was sent out also in advance. And I want to thank Warren Gadberry from our transportation department. He supplied a lot of the fleet information and does an excellent job of tracking there. However, if you had additional information on the material I sent, maybe we can talk about that towards the end. But I would like to launch us into our big topic of today, which is our budget process and methodology. Are there any questions or anything that you'd like me to know or get us on track?
Tom? Your mic.
I'm doing it now.
Okay.
As you go through the presentation, I'd like to hear what the impact on the departments of this new process. I mean, because when I first looked at the 5-year chart, I noticed that the budget is not requiring, or apparently not requiring, reductions, but how did that happen, I guess, is what I'm curious about. So. And
thank you, Tom. We'll absolutely talk about why the forecast looks the way it does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think with that, that's a nice launch. I will turn this over to Sandra to take us about 10 minutes. I think we'll have a presentation and then we'll really open it up for dialogue.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Budget Committee members. Again, Sandra Montoya. I want to thank you for having me, and I've got a short presentation for you that just kind of walks through the history of how we are approaching the budget in fiscal year or beginning July of 21. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and do this presentation, and hopefully it'll all go smooth. Okay, so the software that we're using in order to prepare the budget in the coming years is called OpenGov. And so really this is an OpenGov update, and I'll walk you through it. If I can. Let's do this one. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen okay. What we have been doing at the county is called base budgeting, and that's just a line item budget that you look at the history and then you adjust, usually by some inflationary factor, and you roll it forward. And so year over year, you can be certain that the budget is going to be growing, and with any luck and good planning, you can have revenues that continue to outpace expenditures and you're in good shape. One of the other budget methodologies that has been discussed at the county is zero-based budgeting. It's another methodology that basically just strips down the budget every year and says you begin from zero and you take a look at what programs are required and necessary, and you begin building the budget from the bottom up. That methodology is good. However, it's very contentious, and so for that reason, you really have to, eat your Wheaties in order to prepare that kind of budget, because you're in for a grueling process. Another approach to budgeting is called priority-based budgeting. That really has a lot of the metrics that you have been using as in Performance Clackamas. You outline a strategy and you outline priorities, and then you make sure that all of your expenditures and your programs are aligning with a priority-based budget. And then the last one, which is the budget that we landed on in Clackamas County a few years back, and that is budgeting for outcomes. And really the only difference between priority-based budgeting and budgeting for outcomes is the perspective. It is the priority-based budgeting is really based on an administrative perspective, whereas budgeting for outcomes is based on a citizen perspective. So if you the example that I like to use, just because it makes a lot of sense, is when you say number of police officers or sheriffs per 1,000. And for those of us who are in government, we understand that. It's a metric that we are very familiar with and have grown accustomed to. But for the citizen, it doesn't make sense. What does that mean to them? It's nebulous, and they don't understand how they connect with that metric. And so budgeting for outcomes changes that, and it says, what does it mean to the citizen? So for the citizen, it might say, what's the response time? What response can I expect, or what time can I expect from a call to a 911 operator until I see a sheriff at my door? So that's the different perspective. Again, it really is the same result, but you talk about it differently so that the citizen base can understand it. And that is what we are moving towards. I'm showing this next slide. This is our financial strategic plan. So about a little over a year ago, Clackamas County recognized that the systems that we were using were outdated and needed to change in order to launch us into the future. And we embarked on a new ERP that is called OpenGov. And I wanted to just let the committee members know that we are on track in that 5-year project. We have just completed the chart of account updates. And because we are on target, that means that we really have every expectation that by July of 21, when we have that next year budget, that we should be able to use the OpenGov platform. And the great thing about it is being able to tie our performance measures, our outcomes, to that budget. And now I'm going to show you this little video because I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with open.gov. And so I've got this video to share. And it didn't work. Okay, so give me 1 second. It's just a 2-minute video, so it won't take too much of our time.
While she's getting our technology to work, what we want to show you is how our budget software is really going to tie our outcomes and our budget process and meeting the needs of the budget committee and the commissioners with our performance Clackamas.
Sandra, this is Garrett. Did you click share PowerPoint? You might have to do a new share to share the video or the Internet Explorer, whatever you're playing it off of.
Okay, so let's see. Thank you.
Hey, Garrett.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Tom here. Sean is still unable to get in. into the meeting.
Oh, good, she's here.
I
So
will.
I sent Sean 2 emails with the link into the meeting. She
Okay.
wants to check her Gmail account.
Or use the public link and we can bring over.
Either way.
I have Kimberly working on it.
All right, cool.
Okay, are we good? Okay.
Oh, and we don't have sound. Sandra,
Let's move on, Elizabeth.
yeah, Sandra, can you go ahead and close this? We don't have sound.
Oh.
So let's go ahead. We'll just move on this.
Okay.
Let's move to the forecast.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
there we go.
So, so the next slide is our 5-year forecast, and I believe we had a question about this. Really, what we're proposing for the future years is, rather than having a discussion about the cuts that are necessary, so typically we have the departments propose their budgets, and again, it's that baseline budget that just gets grossed up in the following year, and then we go back through, churn it through, and say, we don't have enough, you have to cut. And then we start that cut process. What we're proposing for fiscal year 21-22 is that we identify, based on our revenue projections, we identify that yellow line that you see highlighted on your screen, and it says how much, or what is the number that we can allocate to the departments and maintain a balanced budget. And by that, we're talking a sustainable budget where we preserve our reserves and our contingency. And we say, here is what we have available for departments in the coming year. That is the difference that we're proposing going forward. And I should be clear, that doesn't take away the discussion of potential cuts, but it does have a different start. So rather than multiple iterations of pain, you are identifying from the very beginning what the departments will have available based on the priorities set by the commissioners.
We have identified in our budget packet that we went through in May, we had identified all the different programs, funds within departments that are supported by the general fund. And what we would like to do is, as we go through this next 12 months, is really identify each of those programs, tie them to the priorities of Performance Clackamas set by our commissioners, and look at the outcomes that we are asking for to serve our county and prioritize those dollars to those programs. So I think with that, we'd like to just turn it over to Gary and the chair and have a discussion with the committee on this proposed budget process and approach of using our available funds.
Tom.
So my question is, the earlier part of the presentation talked about how to make the process clear to citizens and their expectations. So where does that come into the process?
Go ahead, Sandra.
So that isn't, I think one of the charts that I showed was a timeline of implementation that actually doesn't come into the picture for, I believe, until like year 3 or 4. So it's not something that would be immediate. It is down the road, but the capability and the package that was purchased under OpenGov does enable that sort of citizen interaction with us in the future.
Yeah, I guess I have a real serious problem with that being 3 years down the road. Because we have decisions to make that will be implemented next July 1st. We know the revenues aren't sufficient to support the services as they're being provided today. So I really think we need to look at that seriously. And just a clarification, OpenGov is a budgeting system. It's not the ERP, isn't that correct?
That is correct. It's a full service budget software that has many applications.
Which is important and much needed, so that's good.
So Tom, could you share with me a bit more what your concern is on getting to July 1st in relation to?
Well, I think it's really critical that, I mean, we are, whether we want to talk about it as cuts, we're looking at reduction in services. There's no way to avoid that. When you allocate the pie for next year, the pie slices are going to be smaller. The pie is smaller, assuming the same assumptions in the last financial plan we showed. And I think it's almost oversimplistic to think you can just divvy up what's available and tell the departments to meet it, because there are policy changes and service changes that are going to be inherent in those proposals they bring forward. That requires an open conversation with the citizens. They need to know what to expect. And my other concern is we're talking about one part of the budget equation. We're not even talking about revenues. I mean, what if current resources are not sufficient to meet the desired outcomes for Clackamas County? I'll let others chime in.
I don't have any other hands up.
I see one.
Yes, I just wanted to share that 10 years ago when I was on the City of Bend's Budget Committee, we used this particular form of doing the budget. And the community came to the meetings as each department held forth on its portion of the budget. And there was a lot of response from the audience, because moving up the amount of time that you could be served by an ambulance or the fire department was very important to them, and it meant more than just looking at a bunch of figures. So I think it's a great system.
All right, Ken, and then Sonia.
I may be asking Tom's question in a different way, not being an accountant, but I'm looking at forecast year number 1, and your transfer to departments is $114 million. That doesn't tell me what programs will be fully funded, partially funded, or unfunded. It doesn't tell me whether or not you're going to increase vacancies that you hold, and by that I mean, are you going to simply continue with attrition, or are you actually saying that a number of people will have to be laid off as a result of that number? There's no way for me to look at that $114 million at this moment and understand what the program and human impact are of that is of that number.
Yeah, very good, Commissioner. And fortunately today we don't have to approve that. What we are wanting to
Yes, no kidding.
because we don't have that information, and what we're embarking on is an approach to fit the budget or to fit the services within the budget. So we don't know how this is going to impact. And discussion we had last week is, is this really doable in 1 year? Because as Tom said too, I mean, there's policies, there's a lot of department decisions, a lot of questions to be asked. How are we going to represent this out to our citizens? It could take 3 years because there's so many things to consider. How we provide service, what our service is going to look like, what the revenue is going to come in. We have next month on our August topics COVID-19 budget impacts, because we don't have concrete impacts today. So looking at the revenues, how are those going to be impacted, which will impact how we identify vacancies or different programs, if there were eliminating programs, and supporting other programs? These are the questions and the discussions that we need to have as a county. Gary leading the EMT and working with you and the commissioners to get us there to answer those questions. Because we know to have a sustainable budget, we only have 114 million to disperse out to keep that line.
So let me, in continuing along that line, if X department's going to receive Y amount of dollars, we have the opportunity to look at that and as a board and as a team of 10 and say that's sufficient or that is insufficient, or it's acceptable to have these kinds of cuts either in the service or in the staffing. In other words, specificity. All of this in the final analysis is from the way I think about it, comes down to very specific decisions on what programs do we want to continue with and how many people are we going to keep or not keep.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm trying to get to the point, when do we get to that point to make those kind of decisions?
At the time you want to have a sustainable budget. Because that's where we're at. That's what we need to do. We need to make those decisions. Either we thin things down or we really look at outcome budgeting. What we're proposing is focusing each of those programs that are being funded by general fund and saying, do these tie to the priorities? Do we want to keep this program, or do we want to focus on another program and put more emphasis there and more funding there? So when are those decisions have to be we start making those today? I mean, not at this meeting, but Gary leads us with those discussions immediately. This budget process for next July start this July.
Another question I have, you're basing this on a 7% vacancy assumption, according to the document I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Are you anticipating through attrition creating a greater vacancy assumption as we go forward to help out in this process? And how far can we go? Do you have any sense of how far you can go in maintaining vacancies as a percentage like you have here and still be able to provide the services and not dramatically negatively impact performance? In other words, you could have 50% vacancy. You obviously would affect morale, and you obviously would affect the ability of the staff remaining to perform the duties. So do we have any sense of what level of vacancy we can maintain and still maintain a decent level of performance and morale? Or will we have that discussion at some point in the future?
I think that is a future discussion. And just to touch on that 7% vacancy, our practice has been here at the county, right now we have 156 vacancies. We budget 100% of those personnel costs from July 1st to June 30. So we factor in that 7% each of those fiscal years where we assume that's the pattern, because we know we haven't hired everybody. Those vacancies still exist today. We're 21 days in. When are we going to fill those? So that's where that 7% is. If we are reducing our vacancies, then we can reduce the vacancy savings, but then we're also at the same time, we're trimming those expenditures. So, but I think what you're asking too is more of a service level. How can the services still be functional if we have those vacancies? And that's a question we don't know today.
Well, going forward, it says a 7% vacancy assumption. I'm assuming we keep a 7% vacancy for the next 5 years, since that's a 5-year forecast. Am I interpreting that correctly?
But I hope that we'll be changing the way we do that and the way we budget, because right now we're budgeting all 12 months. So we know we're not filling those. So we We can cut back actual projected expenditures by reducing that because we haven't filled those positions. So we know we're not going to spend at least 7% of those personnel costs each fiscal year. But if we reduce the amount of vacancies, we can reduce the costs, and then we would reduce that vacancy amount because we would be budgeting more actual instead of
I see what you're saying.
fulfilled. Yeah. Yeah, that makes, if I said that clearly.
All right, are you ready? Sonia?
You answered part of my question a little while ago, but I still want to delve in a little bit. This is a forecast, so we are looking at what we can anticipate and what we hope to have as far as revenues and expenditures to get us through to a sustainable budget over the next 5 years. The piece that is really challenging, and Tom touched on it, you touched on it, is we do not have any idea in this document what money we are actually going to be getting from the state and federal governments and all those constrictions and different grants that we have. I mean, how in the world do we plan for a $1.2 billion enterprise in a forecast when we're just looking at such a small piece? What about those other revenues and expenditures? What do we do about all that? Because we budget for the entire county.
Right. So, for example, in H3S, they're reliant on a lot of grants. And I had an exchange with Rich last week on this a bit. And as he knows, that's when he needs to make those decisions. Right now, he does not know. So, and those are, you know, we all have different revenue sources. And until we know, we cannot, you know, change that dial or change direction until we know the impact. The state said they were looking at 15% reduction and then 4%, 8%. So that could be in a program or 3 programs that spread. So you're right, this is very challenging. And, you know, I think the other word for budgeting is, you know, best guess, because we can only do what we know today. And, you know, we just keep altering that path as new information comes along. It is a moving, living document, you know, as we are every day. If we get new information, we change our direction and our process.
Is there any way that we can align our forecasting with what the state does with its forecast and just be a little bit more scientific about how we're looking at the next 5 years?
Yeah, and I'd like to invite Sandra to speak on that. We were talking about that, and I've asked her to share from the budget office what they're looking at.
Oh, good. And also, Sandra might want to also answer the possibility of going to a 2-year budget cycle instead of an annual along with that, because it might make sense. Line with the state.
So I'll address the first part. Elizabeth and I were brainstorming about just different actions that we have to take to try and get ahead of, and actually I guess ahead is the wrong word, just to try and catch up with some of the changes due to COVID. And some of the ideas that we threw out is just stepping outside of the normal trending of revenue. One of the examples that I know of is, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the economist Tim Dewey. So he's a professor at U of O, and he takes a look at garbage tonnage as an indicator for general economic conditions. And it's correlated that the more garbage the community generates, the better the economics of the community are. And so just trying to draw on some of those things that are a little bit unusual and for most of us just, you know, don't seem that common, but the reality is that there is a correlation and it is proven. And so we just need to, you know, think outside of the box and start to gather up that information to try and do some projections, some better projections of revenue. I think what the bottom line that we came up with is to just sit and wait for the state to produce those numbers for us or to give us a better indication, we're going to be way behind. We'll be in a horrible reactive mode. And so we need to actively start to seek this data. So that's the first take, I would say, on the revenue side. On the 2-year budget, we have not discussed it, at least not with me, but I'm only a month in. And we've been trying to catch up with a lot of the conversations. So now that I know that that's a topic of interest, we can start to explore that. I think my just off the cuff response is we have some pretty hefty projects right now on the table. And before I looked seriously at adding another, I'd want to see us making some success, some good progress on the projects that we already have, just to get some momentum. Because I believe that the technology advances that we are implementing are really going to go a long way to providing transparent information that'll allow us to make better decisions.
All right. Okay, Wilda, and then Paul.
Hey, thanks very much. Just a couple of really basic questions. We're talking about the vacancy rate and leaving those monies in the budget. Didn't we, in this last budget cycle, we took that cushion, if you will, out of the budget for this year? Isn't that, am I remembering that correctly? That we said we're not going to leave those unopened positions in the budget, assuming that they're not going to be filled, a certain percentage?
No, we did leave them in as the budget, as the departments budgeted for them. But where we took them out is in the forecast. We wanted to call out that we knew that there was a good chance that we would have some vacancies going in through the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, yeah, because that certainly tends to make a big difference overall in the budget. And then again, just kind of basic, so that both I understand and our citizens that may be interested in this. So in the budget, in the forecast that we have in front of us, we have a line item for personnel services and then salary expenses and materials and services. And then we have the line item for transfers to the departments, which is starting next year, proposed to be about 114 million. So would that be basically for programs that they are instituting or completing or working on, since the other kinds of things are already covered under the other line items in the budget? And is that where it's more linked to an outcomes budget?
That line, transfers to departments, reflects funding from, say, property tax and other general fund dollars that are going to other funds within the county. So there are other general fund expenditures that occur within the general fund, and then some programs that are funded through some of the federal, state, and local revenue and property taxes are outside. And so it's not a complete picture, and we're working on how to present it. But so in reducing the general fund expenditures, some of that is within the material and services line, and some of it is within the transfers out of the general fund. And they can be for staffing various programs. A good example would be like health H3S. So within their budget, they had a yellow column that said they were funded, I think, $11 million from the general fund. And so that went to 13 FTEs and a variety of programs. So it just depends on what fund it is, what purpose it would be used for throughout the county. It just happens to, this yellow line is a really easy way to be visual to show you how we're capping the general fund expenditures from those dollars, from the state, federal, and property tax dollars.
Oh, okay, I kind of get that, which goes back to that it's based on the outcomes that we want to achieve, or that, you know, that the departments want to achieve, that we've given guidance for.
So this, yeah, and this yellow line just represents a flat dollar amount. We have not tied that to any programs as of
No,
yet. Right.
But we will, that will be the eventuality.
Yes.
Is to say, for instance, if we're going to say, as Sandra said, response time for fire, you know, for fire, for response time for law enforcement, then, you know, then we compute what that means and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let me cogitate on that for a while. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and let me just share real quick. So a couple of things we had talked about, and I think, Tom, you helped us with this in May, is like, we want to follow where the general fund dollars go, right? We say, you know, we support the sheriff's department with general fund, but CCOM doesn't receive any, but they do because we transfer funds from the sheriff's department to CCOM. So we're working on following the money, you know, as we talked about. And then also what Blaze, and our senior budget analyst, has done is he has compiled a list from our budget documents of where we have in the budget world, where all those general fund dollars are going, where the departments within or the programs or expense lines specifically identified where those general fund dollars are going. And so what we could do as, you know, the budget committee with the commissioners, with Gary's support, and how we are going to roll this out, is look at all those and make sure that each one of those programs are, you know, align those to our Clackamas County priorities. And then really identify what's extra, you know, where do we want to put more emphasis, and maybe pull back on another service that doesn't quite align with the county's priorities. So we'll have this documentation to show where the funds are going, and then we can make those decisions. And I think, Will, that's what I hear you saying, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I guess the bottom line on that in my brain at the moment is, so the goals that are set out in Performance Clackamas, that's what we'd like the departments to achieve, because those are the goals for the county. So how much is it going to cost to achieve those particular goals, wherever we end up in that, right?
Well, I tell you, we are on such a good track. Our new chart of accounts is designed, and Krista has done an excellent job working with OpenGov and helping design the chart of accounts, which aligns with our MFR, Managing for Results, which is tied to Performance Clackamas. So we have everything aligned. Now what we want to do is we're going to, through this budget process, as they say, put our money where our mouth is, right? So we've said, these are the outcomes that we want. Here's now an infrastructure via a chart of accounts to help us get there. So now when we do our budgeting, it's going to be very intentional. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're putting those dollars into those account lines that tie to our Performance Clackamas, and see what doesn't make it, you know. So it'll be a very intentional process.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, before we move on to Paul, we have 15 minutes left unless we want to extend the time. The other thing I'd like to change is we're not budgeting for the citizens, we're budgeting for the residents. Okay?
Yes. Good.
All right, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first saw the board packet with this outcome-based approach, I mean, I kind of probably went through all the machinations that you're kind of all verbalizing here. So, but I thought about it deeper, and you know, did a little bit of reading as far as how it applies to in the government sense. But I would just ask everyone maybe to just you know, step outside the box, relax, and just absorb it. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that really, in essence, no, that wasn't the name. That's really what I've been doing in my private sector life. So when I first came on the county as a commissioner, bringing that idea of a strategic plan forward in order to accomplish your goal, I realized we didn't have a strategic plan. We really didn't. And we set about that several years ago, 2013, 2014. Don Krupp said it would take 5 years. So that's 2018. It took a little bit longer. Here we are at 2020. But so now we have the plan. And I always believe we need to update it, make sure we're on board. But in that sense, in my prior life, I really did that every year. I really kind of renewed and revisited my goals and what the strategic plan was for whatever operations I was doing. And it changes your thinking when you're in a very dynamic situation. And in private sector, it is more dynamic. And you're always trying to adjust to the market. And at the county, you know, we've had several years where we thought things were going just fine, but we have to realize now that things here at the county level or at the government level, coast to coast, are actually very dynamic and not necessarily positive, but we get to live within that. So it's actually, in a sense, almost fortuitous that the managing for results or strategic plan, as I call it, is completed for the most part, and we've got the tools, or we're bringing in the tools to make this come together. So I'm actually optimistic, that we will actually be able to be a lot more sophisticated about what we're doing and do it all in a more efficient way. So I've got more of an open mind about it, and I just really ask everyone to actually think it through and do a little bit of research and maybe look at some other agencies that have employed this model. You'll see it more employed in the private sector, probably in years of history than the public sector, but doing it the same way, what did Einstein say? Doing it the same way and expecting a different result is a definition of insanity. So it's time to change the formula here. So I'm thumbs up going forward.
All right, Tom, then Ann.
Right, so I was reaching out to the DAS, Department of Administrative Services, for the Coronavirus Relief Fund, because I want to know how the fund allocated across different government agencies. It looked like Clackamas County got approved at $5.6 million for phase 1. And I would like to know, is the forecast report you showed today include that amount?
So we did not get allocated any money. We are sending them invoices to pay us back for money we have spent. We have not yet received that money. We're signing an IGA on Thursday, and we should get a check following. The next bill that we bill them will be Friday.
Right, okay.
So we're just getting paid back for expenses.
And how much you received so far from the state for the Coronavirus Relief Fund?
Zero.
Well,
Zero?
we've
got our money.
So we've already been reimbursed about $1.5 million. And so, Anna, what you saw is what's outstanding, what our receivable is now.
Gotcha.
And thank you, Chair, because it sounds like he's more in the know than I am, but I checked on it, and maybe within 3 weeks we'll have that reimbursement. So the county has to spend money, track our receipts, and submit for reimbursement for every dollar.
And in which fiscal year you gonna record that reimbursement?
Well, if we get it within 60 days, we can move it back to
fiscal year 20. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Tom, you're muted.
I got it. Thank you. I'm a little curious as to how we decided or potentially decided to bite all this off by next July when we talked about a 3-year sort of phase in. And I'm doubly concerned because we don't really have context for those numbers in yellow. I mean, yeah, they're a allocation of projected revenues with no information about service impacts. So without the context of what this means, it just seems missing. It's required. I mean, what does it really mean?
I'll answer the first part, Tom. So I did. I didn't decide it. I'm proposing that to you as budget committee members. I'm recommending why peel the Band-Aid off so slowly. It's more painful than just ripping it off. And based on what my conversations with Elizabeth, I think our deficit is not as large as we may think. And this forecast you received is different than you've ever received it before, so it's not showing you that data. But Elizabeth and I feel that the gap is smaller than we thought, and we can provide that to you in a way that makes sense. But again, staff only proposes, committee. If you want to direct me now, look, we have 7 minutes left. If you want to direct me now to make a longer time frame, I can do that. But I think this is too important to wait. And so I'm proposing to you, from my staff perspective, I'd like to share that I think we can do it in a year and show you what that means. And then you can decide if you're willing to make those difficult decisions in a year, or if you want to spread it out. We have not provided that to you yet, the data, as Ken mentioned earlier. We will, I would say, in the next 2-3 months before December. And that's the point. You can decide if you want to do it at once or if you want to stage it. Thank you.
So
I'd like to know what the
spread this
current
out for 10
estimate
years.
of the gap is.
I'm sorry?
I said I'd like to know what the current estimate of the gap is. I mean, there's absolutely no context to this. I mean, I'll let it go, but.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And those are the decisions, that's the process we need to go through over the next 6 months as we ramp up to start building our budget. So we don't have that information today.
Okay.
But you said the deficit isn't as big as you thought it was. What are you thinking it is?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, if we continue as we've done in the past, but remember 2 years ago for the budget, we reduced the general fund expenditures by 12 million. We reduced them by 6.1 last year for this coming budget. And so we've made significant impacts into those expenditures. So what we want to do is hold that line. As you see this year, it was the budget was 110 million, 110 and a half. And so just by increasing it, 3.5 million for next year is not a lot in terms of, escalating costs with programs. So we would just have to keep refining those programs, what we're doing to serve the residents of the county, and identifying what costs and expenses we want to keep in for those programs.
Okay, Ken and then Martha.
Elizabeth, I want to make sure you have every opportunity to help us with this problem. So this is by no means a criticism. And Gary, I appreciate that you would like to get this done in a year, but I want to reiterate a very important priority that I have been public about, and that is that especially in the general fund arena, I am not interested in layoffs if we can possibly avoid it. We have not tried all other opportunities, which would include furloughs, among other things. If it means delaying a year or two, which is part of the discussions we've had in the past, in order to get where we want to go and not have to lay people off or dramatically negatively impact the programs that we're trying to do, I don't see the downside to taking a little bit longer to solving the problem. Nobody has yet said that there's a major downside to that. So I want to make clear where my priorities lie in these discussions. But if you can do this in a year with those provisos, great. I mean, obviously we want to get there as soon as possible, but I want to minimize the damage as we go forward trying to get there. I guess that would be the best way I could phrase it. I just want to be very upfront with you as to what my priorities are, because you have to consider that as well as with all the rest of us as we go forward.
All right, Martha?
So I had my hand up for a while, but thank you, Chair, for getting to me. I do like the idea of finishing it in a year. I do share Ken's concerns. that we certainly don't, but we may not be able to go there. We're just going to have to, I think, being aggressive for a year to really see where we are, I think would get us on solid footing for the future. So I would like to see if we could finish it in a year and actually get things settled and put together. I hope it doesn't mean layoffs. I hope it just means furloughs. Whether you do furloughs, if it takes 2 years or 1 year or 3 years, you know, I would like to really see us move forward with it, Gary, and I trust your judgment with that. So anyway.
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of people retiring over the years, which will continue to increase the number of vacancies. And it may be enough. We have a lot of people in retirement age. And so I'm hoping that there won't be a need to lay off or furlough as people retire. Then we just have to decide, do we fill it or not? Do we fill that position, or are those people in-house can take those positions? So we'll see. So we still have how much more time, Gary? About 3 minutes? 1 minute.
1 minute. Yep.
Anybody have any final comments?
I think
Jan?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I support Gary's proposal. If worst comes to worst, we can always change it when we get closer if need be, but I really support it.
All right. Don't see any others. I guess we're good on this today.
So thank you, Budget Committee members. We'll meet again next month. It's every month. And you see on the agenda what our proposed topics are next month. These are only an hour meetings, so staff will do our part to be really concise, to give you time to have a really thorough discussion, knowing you only have 60 minutes. So again, thank you all, especially public members, for being here. We'll be back. We'll be in touch with you. Thank you. Commissioners will allow for a quick transition while we go to the next policy session here.
Okay, we have a different link, right?
Same link, right? Same link, Christina, Drenda, right?
Same link, yes,
Yep.
stay on.
Yep, we just
All
stayed.
right.
Yep. All right, so we'll transition public and government affairs staff for the next policy session. Wait just a moment for that to happen.
Is this Suicide Prevention Coalition, Clackamas County, a meeting that everyone's going to? Sonia, you know about this?
Say again, the human services, the homeless services.
No, it says Suicide Prevention Coalition in Clackamas County.
When is it?
It's after this. It's at 4:30.
Oh, I don't know if I have that on my calendar. Oh, I do have attend if able.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, I'm not sure. Brenda would know.
On mute.
I will check.
It looks like it's at 4:30.
Yeah, it's just informational was what I. Oh, that's what Caroline just texted me.
Okay, if you're ready, Chair, we'll do the next policy session, the 2020 community survey results. We have Public and Government Affairs, Sue Hildick, Dylan Blaylock, and let's introduce your guests. Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Gary. Hello, commissioners. We are, Dylan and I are here today with John Horvick from DHM, and they have just completed our 2020 community survey. I think you've seen these for many years and know that for the last 20 years, every 2 to 4 years, we've gone out and done a temperature check with our residents to see what their general satisfaction is, what their issue priorities are, and then we use that data in our planning process. So I'm going to turn it over to Dylan, who was our primary conduit to DHM, and then John.
Sure. Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, County Administrator Schmidt and County Commissioners. Good to see you. Christina, I just need to check real quick. Does John have sharing privileges? Because I believe he's going to do his PowerPoint. Or John, I can do it for you. It's really up to you. You're on mute. Oh, you have it. Okay, great. So Christina, if we could do that. So this is going to be, I know time is of the essence here. We've got half an hour. John is going to present for about 10 minutes or so on the high-level survey results. And then for the last 2 or 3 minutes, I will come back to you and tell you how PGA is going to utilize some of the data. So with that, John Horvick.
There you go.
All right, let's see if I can get this to work. While I do, let me just say thank you all for an opportunity to work with Clackamas County again. And let me just do. You all see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to be quick. I think I only have about 10 minutes, and so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. I do want you to know that a full report has been delivered to you that goes into more detail than what I'm going to do today. The full report has more questions discussed, as well as additional breakdowns by demographics that will be of interest to you. And then I don't see him. I believe my colleague Eddie Szymborski is on as well, and he has some of the more detailed information too, so he may be chiming in too with more detailed information or in Q&A. So I'm just going to go through this. Dylan wanted to make sure that we just talked about a few survey demographics before we got into this. By the way, this survey was completed late May, so May 20th to June 1st, I believe. So keep that in mind as thinking about the events of the world that were occurring then and how that might influence the results here. But just by area, just so you know, this has a good mix of both incorporated and non-incorporated areas of the county. Gender, we're evenly balanced between men and women and non-binary individuals. And then by age, we have a good spread. All these are matched to the American Community Survey 2018 numbers, the most recent numbers that we have. So we got a real good diversity and representation of the county. There's more demographic details that are in the full report and other documents that we've provided. But do know that we got a good look across the entire county by all sorts of demographic criteria. So begin by so big picture. So life in Clackamas County, how are things going? And the key question that we asked for that are, all things considered, are things in Clackamas County heading in the right direction? Or are they off on the wrong track? This is the classic question that we ask here in Clackamas County, but in communities across the state. And keep these numbers in mind. But we actually held pretty steady, considering, COVID was, we were in the thick of it by the time the survey was fielded, and the economic sort of pinch that folks were feeling, we're certainly feeling it by late May, but actually held up pretty well. I'm going to give you some context at the end, but do know 52% right direction, 24% wrong track, and not much difference between 2018 and 2020 on that question. Now, we did also ask, things getting better, staying about the same, or getting worse, quality of life in the county? And majority, 53%, say it's staying about the same. If you compare, though, the getting better and the getting worse number is a bit higher than the getting better number. And some of that is just, there is always going to be part of any community that tends to look at the glass half empty, and some of it is certainly that. But we do want to pay attention to this trend, because it may be picking up something. Maybe it's just the moment that the survey was in the field because of everything that's going on. But there is that slightly higher percentage of folks saying things getting worse than those who say it's getting better. What do folks value about living in Clackamas County? This is an open-ended question. People told us whatever that they wanted. We listened, put into some of these categories to make sense of it all. The top two things are the environment, outdoors, and then family, friends, and neighbors. And if you really sort of look at the next one down, sense of community, maybe an overlapping theme there. These are the values that we see typically in Oregon. So whether we're here in Clackamas County, down in Bend, over in Medford, these are the things that people really value about living in Oregon. It's true in Clackamas County as well. What are some of their challenges? What are they frustrated about? Well, coronavirus, wanting to get back to normal there. Jobs and the economy. That is one that we definitely have seen move over the last several months, and it's not a surprise. Pre-COVID, jobs and the economy had really moved down in our community surveys across the state. That does sort of go up and down with economic conditions, so it's not a surprise. But that's a big jump from what we've been seeing pre-COVID across the state. I won't talk about every single number you see on these slides, but I will try to call out some important ones. One was this really key question. I would recommend Clackamas County as a place to live to my friends and family. 90% of residents of the community agree. Really overwhelming. Look at that strong agree as well. But if we look at sort of the negative side, you got about a third of folks in the community who say that children in Clackamas County who disagree, that children in Clackamas County are likely to enjoy at least the same standard of living as their parents today, and that everyone in Clackamas County who works hard and plays by the rules has the same opportunity regardless of their race and ethnicity. So, even though it's a minority, those are pretty large minorities. And so the full report has more details about who those groups are, but again, something to be thoughtful of and to track over time. All right, county services. There's a lot of them. I'll try to highlight the ones that I think are most important for this discussion today. We asked value of county services. Very valuable, somewhat valuable is what I'm going to show in these charts. And the first obvious thing here is that these numbers are very high. In fact, you're going to see in a moment that they tend to have increased in 2018 compared to previous years. They're ordered by the combined percentage, varying somewhat, but maybe keep an eye on the dark blue bars, the very valuable. You'll see here, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but because of the sort of what's been going on the last few months, I'll call out that law enforcement there, 75% very valuable and 94% total. So, kind of something to be thinking of right now. Some other services that we asked about, maintaining county parks. Let me show you in a minute. There's a big jump in sort of sense of value in that service this year. Economic development is probably the one to pay attention to on the slide. Overall, 87%, 48% very valuable. That's typically what we see. On questions of economic development, it's important. You're doing good work on it, but tends to rank lower typically for community members than some other direct services that are provided. And then to go down a little bit further, just to call out the difference here between this top one, preventing homelessness, 59% very valuable, and then the difference there between that and sheltering homelessness, 46. Now, overall, these are numbers that community residents are definitely telling us that they value, but there is a difference there in prevention versus sheltering that you should be aware of.
And John, just to jump in on this slide, this is one place where we really see some consistent and sizable demographic differences. So looking at preventing homelessness, affordable housing services, and sheltering the homeless, we see consistent differences where residents with lower incomes, renters, residents who have lived in the county for fewer years, and women all place a higher premium on those services than their counterparts.
Thanks, Eddie. So here's just some changes. You can see maintaining county parks. I don't have a great explanation why that big jump. So the gray are the 2018 numbers, and then the blue are the 2020 numbers. But for whatever reason, there was a huge jump in maintaining county parks. And then you can see that just generally, sort of everything shifted to the right this year. So with the downturn, I do think that there was a sort of a look towards their elected leaders to their county government to provide these services at a time of stress. All right, involvement and information, some key numbers for you here. We asked, how engaged are you in county government? And you can see that 46% define themselves as engaged, either very or somewhat. Just 1 out of 10 about said very engaged. This is up a bit from 2016. It wasn't a question that was asked in 2018, but an increase from 2016. So that's good to see. Another thing we measured was do you have any barriers or experiencing barriers to attending public meetings? And 36% said that yes, they did. That's in the donut sort of chart there. But really pay attention to the groups that say that they've had barriers. Those with low incomes, folks of color, newer residents, particularly, all those majority have said that they're experiencing barriers. I think we would have anticipated going in that those would be the groups, but now we have some numbers around them and gives you a chance to make decisions about what to do about that.
Mm-hmm. And just to add a little bit here, it didn't quite make it into a slide in the presentation, but in the report, we show that time of meetings and location and work responsibilities and jobs are sort of the biggest barriers. Childcare comes in next. That tends to be mentioned more often by women, and then health issues and health concerns listed by 10% of community members, and that is higher among older residents.
So we asked about a centralized phone line. So 63% said that they'd be likely to use a centralized phone line. I know that's something that you're considering. 28% very likely. So nearly 2/3 say that that would be important to them. And then one other thing around communication is we asked a number of different sources and whether or not they consider them trustworthy or not to get information about the county. And I'll just really want to call your attention to what's at the top there. Clackamas County website and county social media. It's your direct communications. So both, I think, a reflection of the value that people see in your work, and probably some reflection of the sort of sense of the media that's out there as well. But if you want to get something across, have it be trusted, directly coming from you is going to be the best source of that. And then there's a couple other slides here. We did ask about the History Hub, a potential ballot measure to fund a historical interpretation and preservation in Clackamas County. You can see here pretty divided, well, just equally divided. 46% said they would support some funding measure, 46% oppose. But really pay attention to the strength. 16% strongly support versus 28%, nearly double strongly oppose. These are the sort of numbers that you would, if you put something on the ballot, more likely than not, you would expect it to fail. It doesn't guarantee that. We could have a longer conversation about sort of the dynamics that might be in place. But basically split, but strong opposition, nearly twice as great as strong support. And then I just want to finish by just adding additional context based upon recent work that DHM has done in other surveys. One is just the right direction, wrong track number. So again, we fielded the survey in late May, and you can see these are Oregon numbers in the COVID era, March, April, June, and you can see that right direction number, really, it went up quite a bit. And I think that there was a rallying effect in that sort of March, April period. It fell to 43% in June. I'll tell you, we have a survey in the field right now that's just about to close. That right direction number is going to be down in the low 30s. So we fielded this survey at a time perhaps when sort of sentiment was cresting, but more positive generally than it is today. And I do want you to be aware of sort of that general direction, that trend. The other thing I want you to be aware of is how people are feeling economically. We have been asking at DHM and statewide surveys a benchmark question: how worried are you about your personal financial situation? These are the numbers of very and somewhat worried from 2011 to 2019. You can see it peaked in 2012 with 69% saying that they were very or somewhat worried. It fell to 50% in January of 2019. In the COVID world, where are we? Well, in March, it really did jump up again, up to 63% worry, but it's fallen. In June, it was 49%, which is actually the lowest we've measured since 2011. That combination of unemployment insurance, the federal enhancement, probably maybe people's worst fears not being realized. I don't know where this trend is heading, but I will say in May, 36 out of 48 local funding measures passed at the ballot statewide. This probably had something to do with it. You know, directionally, Are we at the bottom, or could be moving up again, or will the trend persist? I don't know. But this is where we kind of have gone through a lot the last few months, and I wanted to make you aware of that. With that, I'm going to stop. I think I've used all my time more. I'm happy to address any questions you have or turn things back over to you.
Thank you, John. If you could stop sharing your screen, and then we can get back to the commissioners. Commissioners, I was going to talk briefly about how PGA was going to use some of the data, but in the interest of time and making sure that you have enough time to ask your questions, I will see that time and we can go straight to that. So if you have any questions of myself, of John, or of Sue, welcome to take them.
So I'll jump in. I'm not sure who was speaking at the time, but under the one under public involvement or the meetings, if I heard you correctly, I just want to just point that out that I won't say necessarily use the word barrier, but that the concerns about access to attend meetings was time of day. Did I hear that correctly?
Sure. So this is Eddie from DHM. So 35% mentioned time of meetings and location. 30% listed work or job responsibilities. From there down the line, childcare at 14%, 10% confrontation with others, 10% health issues, and then 8% unable to drive. And so those are the biggest ones that we saw.
Yeah, I appreciate you actually pointing that out. It's something that years ago in a different jurisdiction, we polled that and realized that, or surveyed that and realized that that's always been, historically a factor, people working especially. And I was just kind of surprised that, with more people home now and maybe Zoom, that number would be, and I can't remember what the numbers were years back, but that's still an issue. And so I think it just goes to show that I know that currently there's been less evening meetings now, in our COVID environment, than there has been in the past. And that's actually turned, and location obviously is a factor. If you can't drive there, if you don't have Zoom or you don't have the ability to log in, that more people feel more disconnected that I've talked to recently. And this kind of says that a little bit, if I'm hearing you correctly. The other thing I just wanted to mention was I also noticed that the one on the economy, or how people feel about the economy, I almost wanted to just put the stock market numbers right alongside those numbers, because I think there's a parallel there, right?
Yeah, the stock market is, well, I'm not sure what it is today, but at one point the S&P was up 11% year over year, and it was right sort of at that moment. Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, and while I appreciate, I know we do this normally, I'll just close with this, that I know we normally do this in a rotation of 2-3 years and so on, and but now that it's just so dynamic, right? We have all these things going on. I'm just kind of wondering what we can extrapolate out of this long term, and we can just set out, try take out the anomalies, if you will, because we have years of history of the surveys. And like you mentioned on parks, I mean, parks are always way down there at the bottom on priorities, and they're up on top. And I do know that people are trying to get out of their house and try to do something and go somewhere. I think that's the explanation, maybe, as to why people are suddenly saying, how do I get out of my house, right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah. But I'll close with that. Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Anya, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful. I really appreciate it so very much. I'm curious, I see that law enforcement's pretty high. When I think you just asked the question of what's most important to you, is that correct? And 17% said safety, lack of crime. So that seems pretty significant to me, that that's for 17% of the people that answered that question, that was their number one issue. And then when asked about the importance of the services, that 94% said that law enforcement was essential and important. I am just so interested in the conversation that's happening nationally and in Portland around defunding and moving dollars out of traditional law enforcement into mental health services and changing law, reimagining police. I mean, all of these conversations. Do you have any insight for us on where our residents are on any of those issues?
Well, let me try to tackle that a couple different ways. One is this survey, see, late May, early June. Eddie might know the dates better than I do, but that's sort of after the protests have started or right at the beginning. Can't remember for sure, but certainly that number is high in terms of value, and it did increase from 2018. You know, other services increased in value too, so there was a general trend in that direction that is beyond just police. And then like a preview for you, we have a survey in the statewide survey in the field right now. It has a very large sample. It's gonna have a good look at the Portland metro area where we ask a lot of policing questions, and we're gonna release that probably next week. So I'll be able to answer some of those questions and be happy to come back and talk to you about them that you have, because we do have questions in there about defunding and reallocating resources and other policing questions. So I don't know yet for your community, but we'll have new numbers very shortly. I'd be happy to share them with you.
Sure. And then this is Eddie, and just on timing, what I would say is we were basically in the field when George Floyd was killed on May 25th. It's pretty much right in the middle of our fielding. So it was very much still an emergent situation. And I'd say like the national protests and the protests starting up in Portland, there was at least a day or two, couple day lag before that really became such a powerful public conversation here.
National, I'll just say the national poll suggests that the way you frame the issue really matters on how people think about it. Whether you ask about reallocating specific resources, whether you talk about defunding and then stop the question, whether you talk about abolishing, you know, it's very dependent on those sorts of framing issues. But we'll have new numbers for you soon. We'll be happy to share them.
All right, Ken. Ken?
Sorry about that. Regarding the new survey you're doing on policing, are you asking the following question? If we were to reallocate resources from a law enforcement agency to public health agency of some kind, say mental health, and it increased response times by officers, would you still want that to be done? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it's a fair question. And I'll tell you, no, the way that they're framed up in the survey isn't specific as that. And so, you know, any questions that we provide or information we provide, or anything you see nationally, you know, asking yourselves, how would people respond to trade-offs? And if those trade-offs exist, and, you know, how they would be communicated to the public, you know, certainly look at results with that in mind. I'll tell you right now that although we ask a number of questions and ask about different ways, it's not specific to the way that you just framed up, sir.
And I think that the problem with that then is that it tends to be a misleading result, because people, if they're going to give you what their position is on X issue, it seems to me knowing the consequences of their position would be something they would need to calculate before they could give you what I would consider to be a valid answer.
Yeah, perhaps. Yes, this is a good question to be asking.
Cost-benefit analysis, basically.
All right, any other questions?
I see Paul smiling.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you. Or Dylan, did you want to finish up what you were going to say earlier?
Well, as long as I have 2 minutes, just to address one of Commissioner Savis's comments. I was going to talk a little bit about PGA's issue statements, and that we are, of course, dedicated to keeping the public as engaged as possible with its county government and you as the board. And I'll say that what we believe is that a lack of engagement between the county and its communities results in a bunch of negative things. And of particular note regarding the barriers question that John mentioned. The survey shows that the resident types, like those with low incomes, people of color, are exactly the kinds of people that at PGA we need to hear from to be sure that we are being as inclusive as possible. just in general, to make sure that we are reaching people that we need to. And so we want to use this data, specifically the cited reasons why people can't attend meetings or get more involved, and explore how we can break down those barriers to make sure that we're hearing from the people that we should. We're going to be taking a strong look at that. And the only other thing I'll add is lastly to one more point from John. It's very important to PGA that our website and our social media channels are recognized as the most trustworthy source of information about county actions and programs and general news. We've dedicated a significant amount of staff time and resources into making these channels informative, innovative, and approachable over the years. We've redesigned the website recently. We continually try out new ways to communicate via social media, like last year's 360 videos, which all 5 of you participated in. And that's what I can end with. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the information. And I need to say goodbye and turn it over to Martha because I have a conference call. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Eddie.
PGA. All right. So we're going to continue with the issues list from this morning. Commissioners, let's revisit the letter to Milwaukee City Councilors regarding incorporation. Your excellent staff already drafted the update based on your feedback from this morning. It was emailed to you around, I don't think it was around noon time. I hope you had a chance to read it. Are you prepared to approve the letter?
Gary, who sent it to us so I can find it?
Emily.
Emily. I read it, and yeah, I'm okay with it. Ken, Paul, and what about you guys?
I'm good.
Okay. Paul, okay. Sonia?
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't see Emily's email, and I still don't see it. I think I might see it now.
It's pretty benign. It's innocuous.
Just take a minute and read it.
Looks good to me. Good job, you guys. Thank you. Sorry that I was not, I should have done this before the meeting. I just did not see it.
All right, so you're on mute, Commissioner Schrader. So we will go forward and send the letter then. Thank you very much.
Yes, we will. Okay.
Next, advisory boards and commissions appointments. And forgive me, I don't know if it's Drenda or Christina who's doing that.
I think it's Christina, but I'm not sure if she is there. Well, I'll do it. Let me see.
Sorry, I'm here. What am I?
Advisory boards and commission appointments.
Oh, yes. Let me just pull that up. Sorry, I had to run down and grab. Let me see. Okay, so we have ABC for Committee for Community Involvement. And sorry, I'm just pulling it up. And for vector control. Sorry, I haven't done this part before. What else would you like me to say?
Okay, I'll help you. So Christina, you just mentioned the 2 boards and that staff has made a recommendation, and commissioners at this point, you either can make a motion to approve or we can read the names to you. Normally one of you makes a motion.
So Gary, this isn't, I don't see this attached to the issues list that you or that Brenda just forwarded to me. Can you tell me where I find these in my materials?
Yes, this is what Christina sends it in her packet on Thursday afternoons with all the policy session documents in your schedule. It's not on the issues list itself. It comes in an email from Christina Thursday afternoons.
And I can resend that to you if you'd like, Commissioner Fisher.
I always thought we were trying to post that.
Yeah, that would be, oh, sorry. That would be great. It's usually in my calendar invite. So
So what are the names?
The names are for vector control. Staff is recommending Dakota Hufford, and that's just a single one that they're recommending. And then for the Committee for Community Involvement, staff is recommending Barbara Smolak, Rick Cook, Jerry Anderson, Lori Freeman Swanson, and Susie Nielsen. They're all on their second, third, or fourth term.
Okay, was there anyone else that was considered on that one in particular that is not recommended?
Let me see. 2, 3, 4. Not on the Committee for Community Involvement. Let me take a look at. So for the one on vector control, there were 4 other people, or 5 other people that they had taken a look at.
Right. Move for approval.
Second.
Seconded, been moved and seconded. Can you call the poll, please?
A point of order, can we ask a question now that we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, any discussion?
Gary, on like advisory boards and commissions, the way you did the draft response letter, which we can just click on very easily and read right here on our computer, can you do the same thing with the appointments to the boards and commissions in the future? Would that be easy to do?
I need to ask Drenda, or Drenda, have we done this before? If not, why not? And could we do it?
We can do it. We would need to redact the personal information that's included in the packet.
You mean like name, like address and phone number and that kind of stuff? Right. That's fine. But it would be a lot easier there, quite frankly. And it's much bigger print.
Yes, we can do that in the future.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I would really appreciate that as well. It makes it so easy to have it all on the web and just link. We don't scramble around.
All right.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, shall we call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
And Chair Schrader?
Aye, it's approved.
And you did approve both committees, correct, commissioners?
That was my motion.
Thank you. All right, next, and if you could bring Elizabeth Comfort into the room, please. Courthouse funding option, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize that, well, was hoping that maybe we'd all be here. I didn't assume that anyone would not be. So unfortunately, Commissioner Bernard is not here. But I wanted to put a little bit more detail and information before you with regard to the concept of trying to save the millions of dollars. So I was just estimating and wanting to get a hard number and also be reflective of the current market rates and so forth. And so I initially assumed maybe it was between at least 25 million or 30 million. And the memo or the material that was sent out last week from Elizabeth had I think Piper Jaffray was the firm, but on page 7, as she pointed out, are the interest cost. Could someone post that? I asked to post page 7, and I want to just show you all something. So if you look at, you go down the line there, it's about 4 lines up. It says total interest. See that number? Thank you, on the cursor.
Hey,
so if you
Paul, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just can't see this. Can somebody email it to me so I can blow it up on my iPad?
Well, yeah, it's it's actually in your inbox from last week, actually. But the point is that I'll just read the numbers out loud. You get it in essence. So in the first model, the delta is approximately about 40 some odd million dollars for a GO bond. In the full faith and credit act or for full faith and credit bonds, that the delta between a 20-year and a 30-year is $50 million. So it's pretty significant. So all I'm saying is that the numbers are higher than I thought they were. And so the cost of the financing is significantly higher based on how we approach this. So, and again, it's in your packet. You can actually read the whole report. It's several pages, but Elizabeth sent that out, I think Wednesday, I believe. So my request has been to consider the total cost of interest in the bonding scenarios when comparing between a 20 and a 30-year scenario. So as I previously estimated, at least be 25 million. Now it appears to be, it's more $50 million, according to the financial data we received last week. So essentially, and I want you to think about this really carefully, essentially we are poised to spend an additional $85 to $100 million. And where that other $35 to $50 million comes from is the cost of the P3. So consider that in mind. So essentially when we're poised to spend that additional $85 to $100 million in order to capture the $90 million state contribution, it doesn't make a lot of sense that if that equates to that amount of money. Basically, we're spending a heck of a lot more money just to secure the money from the state. So what if, seeing it from a positive viewpoint, what if we could do both? So imagine for a moment that if we save 85 million and retain the 90 million state contribution, which is a total of about 175 million if we act now. Consider that a minute. That is worth looking at. That is worth discussion, and we owe it to our constituents to consider it on the ballot, getting their voice and also getting their choice of which way to go. While I'm not comfortable adding to any household tax burden, I'm also very concerned that public safety will be compromised seriously in order for us to meet the debt service payments on that more aggressive schedule of that 30-year bond, and basically, again, quantifying that to, you know, $85 to $100 million extra expense that will be borne ultimately by the taxpayers. So therefore, because I'm concerned about the household burden, there's also another concept that I'm suggesting that we look at, and that would be a mechanism where anything on the bond measure, if it was to pass, would be refunded back in the last 10 years. So starting year 11, we would have an option of refunding back the taxes back to the taxpayers, okay? So that allows us to defease the debt in 2029, and then we'll have the money to service the debt and capture all the savings from the state that we'll get and the savings of the interest rate. So that's what I would like to propose, and I think we have to hustle, frankly, to actually, if we were to move on this, but that's essentially what I've been trying to get staff's attention on for the last 2 years, not having a whole lot of numbers, and some of those numbers are coming forth to I can actually make a more, a little bit more accurate estimate of the savings, but that's significant. So that's my pitch. Questions?
Any questions? Well, I have a question. So Jim isn't here. Is this something you want a decision right now under issues, or is it something we should bring back one more time to a work session?
Well, I spoke to Gary. I told him I wanted to put this on issues for today. I got the numbers again, like I mentioned, we all got the numbers from Elizabeth on Wednesday. So I had very little time really to absorb all of this and put it together. But I think we owe it to ourselves, to the taxpayers, to our general fund. The cuts we're going to have to make the bond payments for the courthouse are significant. And if the messaging is done right and the ballot language is done right, and people know that we're going to do this either way, if it doesn't pass, then we'll do it the more expensive way. If it does pass, then we save a heck of a lot of money. And I think that's a significant message. And actually, the impacts per household for the courthouse are low, but the messaging should be about the money we're saving, not about the project. So I don't know if maybe Elizabeth could add anything to the numbers. I didn't calculate in all the other ancillary savings that would be there by taking a different approach because there are, other savings I haven't even calculated into this. Anything you want to add, Elizabeth?
Well, I think what I'd like is maybe to dialogue with you a bit more, Commissioner, so I can understand greater your proposal. Because I think there's a lot we can look at and explore here. I do want to point out that we're not able; those numbers aren't factoring in the operation costs as well, because this is not the P3 model lending that we would be looking at. But I think I need to understand a bit more what your proposal is, what you're looking at.
Sure, sure. And then I know we have a schedule, a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and I'm happy to share some of that tomorrow.
Very good.
But yes, I guess Chair Schrader, I would like to bring it back for a work session on as soon as possible, because if we're going to put it on the ballot, we got to move fast.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Yeah, so Paul, I'm sorry, I was scrambling around trying to find, because I couldn't see, but what I'm looking at, Gary did email me the page, and what I'm looking at are two different scenarios under the interest cost for a general obligation bond or full faith and credit, which doesn't do the comparison to the P3, and the P3 has many other things that are playing into this, such as we can delay payment. We have other debt that we are going to be retiring that sort of aligns with the P3. We get operations costs of the P3. There's a lot of other things that we get. So it's not, we're not comparing apples to oranges. If we could on a graph, I think that would be fine. But I did not capture the first of what you said, because I was looking. I have to, Paul, I'm the type that has to look at what it is and then listen at the same time, and I just couldn't see it.
Right,
So.
and it's been very difficult for me for 2 years to try to get a proposal put forward, so we had that option in front of us where all those calculations could be done. But even if we went with the P3, there's still at least 40 something million dollars of savings. Period. Going with the P3, if you chose to stay with the P3. If you choose not to, but the reason, as I understood, the impetus to take the P3 was that we could stretch it out for 10 years to 30 years, an additional 10 before we defease the bond, so we can make the debt service payments. So that was one of the rationales for the P3 in the first place. But there again, what I'm showing you is striking. We're spending potentially 85, 90 million, $100 million to secure the state funding of $90 million. That's a fool's errand.
Oh, where do you get those numbers? I don't see that in these materials.
That's why I think a work session and laying that all out in a more detailed way would answer your questions.
So these are your calculations?
Well, I think that spreadsheet you're looking at is not my calculation. That number of total interest is real.
Well, the number of total interest is, in the case of a general obligation bond, at a 0.05 levy, or full faith and credit is if the county were to take out the money itself.
Right. And there's something.
That's where that interest is. So I'm not sure how you get to the savings.
Well, just subtract the numbers in those two columns, the 20-year and 30-year. So just subtract the interest amounts.
So I don't think we're not prepared to make a decision right now. So the question is, do you want to move ahead to a work session?
Yes, please.
That's what I'm asking the commission. Is that something you want to do, Ken, Sonia?
Chair, my hand is raised, Commissioner. May I speak?
Sorry, I don't have that.
That's fine. So I have multiple staff who is in the room right now that can comment if you wish to answer the questions you raised. Look, you just made a decision on this last week, commissioners. So if you're saying you want to reverse that decision or hold on that decision, I need your direction today, and we can reschedule another policy session. P3 is just a mechanism. It is not the funding. We still have to determine how to fund the courthouse. You could still do a general obligation bond. That is not off the table. It never has been off the table. You don't have to do it this year. If you do go forward with the P3, you have up to 10 years to make that decision. Yes, there's a cost to doing a P3. And the chart you saw, there's a cost no matter how you fund this. There is a cost no matter how you fund it. So with great respect, I'm just asking, you made a decision. What are you asking staff to do? We're moving down a path here. If you'd like another work session, Is it going to the ballot in November? Is it revisiting the P3? I just respectfully ask for clarity because now I'm getting confused what you're asking for.
Paul has his, or Commissioner Savas has his hand up.
I'll say this to my colleagues. My frustration that I expressed on the day we made this decision is that we did not make an informed decision because this was not prepared for you, that I had asked for to be an option for months and months and months. It's real. This is real money.
So with great respect, Commissioner Savas, this data was provided to the board in October 2019, this exact sheet. It has been updated since then, but this exact document was provided to the board in October 2019.
Not in the detail that Commissioner Fisher and the rest of us need in a comprehensive way. No one told us that that pursuing a P3 model with full faith and credit on 30 years was the same cost as the money we're trying to acquire from the state of Oregon. Did anyone ever say that? No. I also asked Gary for polling on that savings. Instead of polling our constituents or a survey on whether or not they want to fund a courthouse, poll on whether or not they want to save 50, 85, or $100 million, whatever the number comes out to be. I need staff's help to put this all together. And that's what I've been asking for. And I got pieces here and pieces there. But if you look at the bonding numbers that was provided in 2018, and you look at what was provided by Elizabeth, and you piece all this together, the numbers change with the market, right? But at the same token is the presentation was never made. It was never an option on any of the staff presentations. So we did not make an informed decision.
Well, Paul, I don't see your 90,000 savings.
Well, you're not going to see the 90. You're not going to see the 90 because that's if you take out the P3 cost. You'll get the 90.
Ken.
Okay.
Have your, go ahead,
Yeah,
Ken.
I'm sitting here holding the book in my hand that we got from Gary Barth, dated 1/7/2019, that has 6 different scenarios of the way this could be funded, including 3 traditional funding variations and 3 P3 funding variations. The document that we have today, I want to sit down with Elizabeth and have some discussions with her. I need to do some comparisons against this document because, quite frankly, the 27 pages that document is rather confusing, to say the least. So as far as our direction from last week is concerned, which was to continue to explore how the P3 option would work, if I remember correctly, I don't see any reason to change that. As far as if we do something different than that, I need a lot more information that I can compare against the document that we received back in January of 2019. So I've asked Kimberly to get me an appointment with Elizabeth to go over the options. And then I'll be prepared to have a more in-depth discussion, but I am not prepared for that at this point in time.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand up.
All right, okay, Commissioner Fisher.
Oh yeah, just, hey Ken, I would love to join you in that talk with Elizabeth, if that's okay. We can do it too with Elizabeth, save her time. And Paul, if you could just show me the math, just do the equation for me and just send that out to all of us, that would be great. I would really like to follow your thinking. But Gary, I don't think we need to change our direction. I think that would be a big mistake.
To recommend that. My sense is let's stay the course, but let's go ahead and have meetings with Elizabeth and at least within the commissioners have them kind of go through it and vet it out. I think that's, but right now, I think we ought to just stay the course to give staff some clarity. But I don't think any one of us is against taking a look at this. And if we fully grasped it, then we can, nothing's ever written in stone. So Gary, I would just give the direction, and I would think that consensus is to stay the course right now with the P3, but we have commissioners that want to talk to Elizabeth about Paul's scenario.
And since Paul is going to be having a conversation tomorrow, I understand, with Elizabeth. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Then I would assume that my conversation with Elizabeth will be after that. So Elizabeth will have Paul's information, and that may be helpful in the discussion that I have with Elizabeth. And that will help me formulate my own decision making.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'll just add, I'm fine with that until, when you get the numbers, but I do need staff's help, frankly, to put the rest of the numbers together and a presentation together that's comprehensive. And you rightfully, it's totally understandable that it's hard to grasp what I'm trying to say. And that's why I asked for staff assistance as this is an option a long time ago, and it's still not before you. And that's what I'm asking to do. So I will work on that and hopefully get some assistance on that.
Okay. Gary, can somebody give Paul the polling report too that we did?
I already saw it.
Oh, okay. I thought
I saw the raw data and the questions. Had you asked the questions differently, you would have got a different result.
Maybe.
We don't know. We don't know.
That's an assumption.
We don't know. So I think, Gary, are you okay? We'll stay but other commissioners, we want to do our homework at least to try and grasp it. But right now I don't see that we're going to immediately change course. So, okay. What else have we got?
Okay, I have a new question to ask you that just came up today. So commissioners, you are scheduled to meet as the board of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District on Monday, August 17th. Almost a month ago when you last talked about this, you had asked staff to schedule an in-person meeting that will also have a Zoom component. I just want to clarify for you that you still are open to the in-person meeting. It will be in the evening on Monday, August 17th. The location at this point is the Public Safety Training Center. Based on the governor's current orders, we can't have more than 25 people in the room at one time. So counting each of you plus staff, that's 7. That's probably 11 of us as staff. So not more than 11 members of the public can attend in person. I'm just seeking your guidance. If you'd like to go forward with the in-person meeting, happy to do that, but there's limits to that. I just want to confirm your direction, please. And we have Paul and Sonia on the list.
Yeah, I would say that I would be concerned that with the limited amount of capacity of 25, that if 5 more people showed up than there was room to, that'd be 5 people that would miss out on the meeting. So I'm more inclined to think about a full Zoom meeting than otherwise. If that 25 person limit is in play.
I prefer a Zoom meeting. I don't know what the rest of the commissioners think.
Fine.
I think it increases participation in some way, but anyway.
So Commissioner Fisher had her hand up.
Yeah, Paul said exactly what I was going to say. So thank you for channeling me, Paul.
Okay, so if you're okay then, commissioners, we will go back to making it a virtual meeting only on August 17th. Thank you. Staff, of course, is happy to do whatever you ask us, but we were concerned of how to pull this off and while maintaining safety for the public and for our staff. Okay, we will make that slight modification as we go and promote that meeting this week. All right, thank you. Finally is Commissioner Communications. Commissioners.
I have nothing.
Okay. Sonia, have you got anything?
Yeah, so Gary and I had a meeting with the Coalition for Safe Kids, and we have a policy session that's going to be set up. I think it's soon, very, very soon, to look at, what was that, Gary?
Next Tuesday, July 28th.
I thought so, but gosh, the days just keep going along very, very quickly. So it's pretty exciting times in that we've all been talking about this. And Martha and Paul, you for much longer than Ken and I, because we are newer on the commission. But there's going to be a presentation on some polling, and there will be, the numbers look very, very good to put this out to the voters for a very small ask. And we will have to make a decision very quickly because the timeline is very, very short. And if you get calls from the coalition is pretty well established. They've been working on this for quite some time. They've already have a campaign manager and really moving forward. If you get calls from Melissa or from Rose Fuller or from Children's Center or from Simon or any of those folks, take their call, hear what they've got going on. It's pretty exciting, and we will all be briefed by the whole team next week. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is in the works.
Okay. Paul, have you got anything?
I've said enough today.
Well, I do have a few things, but I'm going to wait until Thursday under communication then. Okay. All right.
That's all for today then.
All right. Okay. Take care, everybody.